welcome to the Merri-Cast, the show that puts you on the fast track to confidence in starting and growing your business. My guest this week is Mindy Gibbins-Klein, founder of the book Midwife, also founder of the Thoughtful Leader. My emphasis on the full bit of that word is deliberate, and we'll get to that bit later. And another initiative called Giving 1%. Like many of us, Mindy was made redundant earlier in her career. It happened to her on more than one occasion, and she became, as she puts it, an accidental entrepreneur. It was a very happy accident, as it turned out, because she's gone on to make a great success of it. And Mindy, as you will hear, is blessed with abundant energy. You can hear it literally fizzing away as she answers my questions. Mindy started a business and then realised that it needed to morph into something quite different and unexpected, one which centred on helping others get books out of themselves. Well, as a writer, I'm a bit biased in support of her on this, of course, but let's go back to basics. I mean, what's the big deal about books for Mindy? Well, she started by writing young, very young, as it turns out.
Thank you for asking. Very few people ask me about, when I was a baby, but I'm joking. I did learn to read at 3 years old and started writing books at 5 years old. So it's been in my blood, writing. Turns out it's always been in my family. So my dad wrote, his dad wrote, and I'm not sure, before that, because I never asked, and they've passed, sadly. But I did write a lot. I won some competitions and, wrote for journals in high school and all that. But then Dad, funny enough, encouraged me to take a more practical route to my career. He sort of wouldn't fund me doing the arts as a career. So I studied linguistics and then business, and I started working in sales and marketing and training jobs, which I loved. That brought me indirectly to the UK, where after, a few different things happening in my life in the States, because I'm from New York, as people may know, I started working in marketing jobs here in the UK. And then, just to finish it off, I was made redundant 3 times. And the third time, I just thought, I've had enough. I had 2 little kids. I just didn't want to go through that again. And I had lots of ideas, but I never really had the confidence to start up my own business. But then I had a few payouts and I had a bit of time and money, and I thought I'll take the plunge. So I was kind of an accidental entrepreneur.
Okay, that's an interesting term there, accidental entrepreneur. Before that, before those things happened and the succession of redundancies, and I think there's a number of us who have been made redundant at least, sort of 2 or 3 times. I'm one of them, by the way. Were those sort of entrepreneurial ideas even in your mind, or were you quite happy being in a sort of, organization? You were at Nortel, weren't you? And
yes,
Riversoft and so on.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I never really did want to start my own business, despite having studied international business. I didn't think I wanted to be the owner. I wanted to work in an organization. It never occurred to me until, I just thought, well, what's the alternative to keep banging my head against a wall, traveling overseas, leaving little kids at home. And it kind of, I began to focus on doing life differently.
So you were at that moment, we've used that term, sort of accidental entrepreneur, where you kind of reached this crossroads, and and so you decided to move into it. But did you necessarily know what or who you'd be selling to? I mean, what's the initial thought process in there? What I mean, it's one thing to say, yes, I want to do this, but then it's another thing to think, well, what is it exactly I'm going to sell, and who am I going to sell it to?
Yeah, thanks, Trevor. I was very clear. Although, it looks very different to what I do now. But when I left corporate, I thought, what's my expertise? Marketing and training. And so I set up a marketing consultancy. I'd also been very lucky to study with people who trained with Tony Robbins. So I set myself up as a coach, and I kind of went to networking events with those hats on. Marketing, what do you need? Marketing, coaching, pick a card, any card. But my first book had just come out right in that year leading up to setting up on my own. And that had been a labor of love, but also a real challenge. And I won't go into the whole story, but it took 10 years of doubt, self-doubt, perseverance, knockbacks to finally see it in print. And every time I showed up at networking meetings, it was like, you're interested in marketing, coaching. Oh, and by the way, I've written a book. And everybody was like, oh, book. Oh, I'd love to write a book. How did you write a book? I know someone who wants to write a book, book. And it only took about 10 months for me to morph all my businesses together and realize that I had marketing and coaching skills to help people with books. And that was way back in 2002.
Mm.
So I didn't know what I was doing, to answer your
Yeah.
question. I thought I was clear. Well, I was, but then I changed my mind and my focus because, well, I know what happened. I'll tell the
Yeah.
story so the listeners can really grab
Yeah.
hold of it.
Uh,
I was marketing books for a publishing company and, doing launches and promotions, and they sent me a book that was, well, basically unmarketable. And I said, I can't promote this. And they said, you have to. The client's already paid, blah, blah, blah. And so that was the last project I ever did because the thought in my head at that time, 23 years ago, was I wish I had been involved at the beginning because the book just had so many problems, so many problems. And I just thought, what a shame. And it could have been so much better. And then my experience, I could have done it so much faster. And so all that came together. And I created the book Midwife in '03, trademarked it in '05, and never looked back.
Right. So let's start to explore that. There's one thing I want to pick though first before you do it. You were saying about moments of doubt and self-doubt that you were having was that to do with the production of your own first book,
Well,
or was that? Just tell me a bit about that.
you and I are involved in the book industry, and the thing that I've noticed is no matter who you're talking to, they had moments of self-doubt because it's very exposing, isn't it? To put your thoughts and ideas and stories into a book, and you're going to be out there, and open the kimono, and it's out there. It's you can't retract it. People are going to be buying it, reading it, thinking whatever, and that thought can creep in even before somebody publishes their book, even while they're writing it, and even before they start to write. I've had so many conversations with people who are frightened to death and they haven't even written or planned one word
Mm,
because they think they know what it's going to be like, and they're so worried about the reaction and rejection. And I had over 100 rejections from publishers. So it's real, but it's how you cope with it. It's not, it does happen.
yeah. Okay. No, it's just fascinating. I'm sure our listeners, whether they're on a book journey or a separate entrepreneurial journey, will be really fascinated by your insights. Let's get back to the book Midwife. I
Sure.
mean, you told us a little bit about the story about how this came about, but I mean, what kept the inspiration going? I mean, we've just touched on doubt and so on. Like after you've done the big da sort of moment where you've sort of mentally or reality sort of launched the business. I mean, what were those early years like for you? I mean, in doing that, in turning book midwife into something that people understood and wanted to be part of.
Well, the funny thing is, when I first started, I was very clear. All these people were saying they wanted to write books. Apparently, 8 or 9 out of 10 adults have that on their bucket list or goals list. However, they didn't realize it was possible. They didn't realize that there was help available, especially at the early stages. And they also didn't know what they should write exactly. There was a lot of uncertainty. So I would have people say, "Oh, why would I write the book? Why would I do it now? Why would I need help?" And that all those questions to me were obvious, or the answers, but people really were not in that mindset that they're in now because with about 5 other people who I can picture right now, way back when, 23 years ago, we sort of created the book coaching industry.
Hmm.
It wasn't a thing. And now it's like, well, you can write a book and it's easy to publish. And by the way, there's all this help. And I mean, I'm on a list somewhere with 110 other book coaches. That was not a thing
Hmm.
so many years ago. So that was the early days. And I had to convince people that their story and their expertise was worth sharing. and that actually they could publish, and all these publishing models were just coming into the market. So it's been an interesting journey. Now people are, oh yes, book coach, oh yeah. Now they're like, oh, I don't need a coach, I'll do it my DIY.
Yeah, it's fascinating how, it's like, industries, for want of a better term, let's call it like the industry has sort of grown, is kind of grown and changed, and certain things, as you said, are now taken for granted, which weren't obvious sort of back then. I mean, a doubt is obviously emerging as a theme in terms of people when they're writing books, but there are other common misconceptions that people have around writing books that you kind of come across sort of frequently.
Yeah, well, a book will be a really, really important piece of somebody's marketing, but I call it a sacred part of them going out into the world, which is a bit woo-woo, but then we know each other, I'm a bit woo-woo. But also, to touch people's hearts in that way with your words, to put your thoughts and insights and ideas into a package and gift it to the reader, that is something special. So it's a big thing. And I think just human beings, we're scared of big things. I don't think it's the thing. It's just we know what it's going to take. I'll amend that. We think we know what it's going to take because lots of people that I speak to said that they saw friends take 2, 3, 4 years or more to put a book together. My journey was 10 years, so I get that. So they think, oh, it's going to be so much time and it's going to be so, and they just sort of put it on the back burner. And, I'll do it later when I have more time, more free time, when I retire. And unfortunately, most people's books stay inside and they die with the book still inside. I think we all know that. So I'm passionate about getting the message across that actually they can write their book. They should write their book and give it as a gift to people. I'm talking metaphorically, but maybe, physically give books away. But, this is your legacy. This is something you're either going to do it or you're not. It's kind of binary.
Yeah.
And not only that, but, it doesn't have to take 2, 3, 4 years. It doesn't even have to take 1 year. I mean, we hit on this process 20 plus years ago of getting the whole book from idea to finished manuscript in 90 days. That scares people too sometimes.
I've got a little hobby horse on that, but actually, because I'm a big believer in what you're doing on that, because to set a time limit, because my slightly strange example of that is that way back in the past, I wrote 3 books, and each coincided with my wife announcing that she was pregnant, and and that literally I had 6 months in the case each case in order to finish the book, and I think that I probably came up with as good a book in each case, in that 6 month
Yeah,
period, as I would have done if I'd had 3 years or 10 years
probably
or
better,
something to do.
Trevor.
Maybe, and it's difficult to know. But I'm a big believer in what you're doing in terms of putting some sort of maybe stretch time limit on that. I mean, has that been a controversial thing amongst? Have some people rebelled against that?
Well, the people who tend to be attracted to what we do, my process, they are professionals and they would like to compartmentalize projects and say, right, this is a 1 quarter project. They can think in terms of quarters, entrepreneurs. And that is actually helpful. The people who say, oh, I can't do it, they haven't even asked me how many hours a week we're talking about in those 13 weeks. And they're already coming up with excuses. No, I can't do it. It's going to take me 6, 9, 12, 15 months. If that's what they believe, well, we know about beliefs, don't we? They're real for the person who holds them, and unless they have a shift. So I don't pressurize anybody. I mean, there are enough people helping others with books. There's enough business, if you want to call it. I work with 3 clients per quarter at the moment. I've done lots of group stuff over the years, but hopefully, I'll be able to share what I'm up to now because it's the book midwife is maybe 20% of what I'm doing, and
Yeah.
I've allowed myself and created that for myself by saying I only work with 3 clients per quarter. And well, oh, and I sold the publishing company, of course, that took up a lot of my time. And now I'm, able to pursue other projects which are related and meaningful, and they're my future. So
Let let's talk. Should we talk a little bit about those? I'm very interested in, all of them really. But but there's the thoughtful leader. You and I have occupied the world of thought leadership, but you've got thoughtful leader, and I'd like to hear more about that. And then also, one thing that my colleague Charlotte came across when you were giving a TEDx talk, recently around, giving 1%. And so let's take those in turn. Let's talk about thoughtful leader first, and then we'll move on to giving 1%.
absolutely. And they're both related because giving 1% is thoughtful leadership in action, and it's basically about thoughtful giving. But the context is over the years, as I was helping people with books, I always knew it was never about the book. Book is just a metaphor. And people who focus on the book, the book, the book, and it's not part of a bigger plan or ecosystem, I think they're missing out. But if people come to us and they just want to do a book, that's fine. These days, I think people understand about building a profile, a personal brand, and if they have a good book at the hub, then they're in good shape. What happened was uh, lots of people jumped on the bandwagon, as they do, and the book industry got a little bit commoditized. You may have noticed this. So it's fine. I mean, you're always going to have different levels. But then people started talking about thought leadership in terms of books. And thought leadership was a very new term in the 1990s. I latched onto it in 2008. And I just thought, no, a lot of my clients are thought leaders. They're just not recognized. And so I did a bit of research and I wrote 24 Karat Bold back then, all about what it takes to be a real thought leader. And many people were just throwing the term around. So I kind of went full full steam ahead with that and began speaking and writing about thought leadership. And then in 2015, 10 years ago, I noticed everybody was thought leader, this thought leader, thought leadership. And I just thought it's not always got the quality that we'd expect or that we would hope to see. And so you can't just call yourself a thought leader. Please don't. Anybody listening, it's one of my rules. Well, one of my requests. Please never call yourself one. If you do all the right things, the market will call you one. And if the market's not calling you one, then you're probably not doing all the right things. But I'll park that for a minute. The thoughtful aspect of it really came about because I just like raising the bar. Anytime I think a bar needs to be raised, I raise it, especially when I'm trying to do limbo, which I'm really bad at. Raise that bar for me. Um, I've got, I've got a real passion for people who think deeply and people who are willing to put the extra thought into things, thought, care, and consideration of others and also of their ideas. So the thoughtful leader has 2 aspects, both definitions of the word thoughtful, kind of thoughtful, pensive, let me put thought into it, and thoughtful, considerate. It's my belief that people need to have this kind of thoughtful first. They need to care enough, they need to be considerate enough in order to put the time in to think about something, to put the research or just thinking time, reflection, because there's a lot of surface stuff going on. I'm not going to talk about AI in this interview
Mm.
because it's got a whole raft of issues associated with it. And it is stopping people doing a lot of thinking for themselves. So to finish up, thoughtful leadership, in my opinion, is like thought leadership 2.0.
Yeah.
It's the next level. And, that's kind of how we're going to parse content in the future. People already are. We look at content online in books, right? And we
Yeah.
know what's had the real thought put into it.
I think what you're doing is absolutely necessary because you're right that there are too many people, maybe in marketing department somewhere, who are just slapping the badge of thought leadership onto something that they've done, which is clearly not. And so to actually to raise the bar, as you said, I think is a brilliant thing. And particularly, yes, let's not go there with the AI thing at the moment, because that would take us a whole another hour, to sort of talk about that. I mean, but the context of that in the background, it's becoming an issue that's really coming into focus, greatly, about what do we really mean by, thoughtful leaders and so
Well,
on. So yeah, please go on.
oh, it's going to shake out. I was just, you know, piggybacking onto what you said because people are not stupid. Well, most people are not stupid. So, people that we work with, entrepreneurs, let's come back to that. The people with us right now, listening to us right now, we've done something. We've had the courage, or we've found the courage. We've taken the risk. We work hard, harder than most people in a job. We deserve to do well. So that's kind of underpinning everything that I do. I have so much respect for people who get over their fears and take risks, who feel the fear and do it anyway.
Mm.
There's so much potential, and most people hold themselves back. So let's give ourselves a pat on the back, fellow entrepreneurs, because you did the first thing. If you really want to succeed in this noisy, increasingly noisy world, unfortunately, it takes more effort now than ever before. In 24 karat bold, which what was that? 17 years ago, I wrote that. No, ages ago. I talked about finding the needle in the ever increasing haystack. And now it's not a haystack, it's a whole field full of haystacks. People really find it difficult to discover the high quality messages, insights, and content. So let's help them. And the way we help them is to take that extra time. First, decide if you care enough. I've launched into lecturing. Is that okay, Trevor?
Yes, yes, okay, that's fine.
I, well, I've got the microphone. I want everybody listening to us now. You have a choice. Every day you have a choice. And that is, do I really put that time and effort in? And that starts with, do I care enough? So, that's it. Well, I was going to say it's an easier question to answer. It's probably a harder question to answer because, we really need to think about it. If you care about making a real impact, then don't you owe it to yourself and obviously the market to put your best thinking and your best insights into everything that you're writing about and speaking about? For me, the answer is yes. It's a privilege to be able to speak on podcasts like this and on stages. I don't take it for granted. I write as much as I can. I aim to inspire, but I can't control the outcome.
So there's just as there's an army of people who are declaring themselves thought leaders and shouldn't, there's actually a bunch of leaders and experts who don't know how good they are, and actually have something to say, but just don't know how to go about saying it. As you said, it's on many people's bucket lists, to do that, but they just don't know how to start, don't know how to continue, and how to finish,
Yeah.
the act of being a thoughtful leader.
In a very volatile, changing environment as well, and seeing everybody piling in and seeing all the haystacks cropping up. Funny enough, when we finish speaking, I have a client coming to do that exact work. That is what I find myself doing these days. And that's my biggest pleasure, is helping somebody with the clarity, what is it that they would like to say to the market? And it
Mm.
sounds very simple, but until we do the deep thinking, we might come up with some glib responses or superficial content. Like I said a moment ago, we see it all the time. And it does take the extra time, and to be willing to put the time in, again, you have to care enough. So it's all related.
Okay, let's relate what you've just said then to the next thing around giving 1%. You said they were linked, so what's the
Yes.
link, and tell me about that.
Okay. Thank you. Because, giving 1% is a concept that occurred to me during the pandemic. What happened was, to make a very long story, well, actually, it was a moment, but in my mind, it was a long decision. I had time on my hands, as many of us did, and something just came into my head. I thought, over the years, my income has really gone up, but I don't think my giving has kept up. I don't know what made me think about it. It was probably seeing my bank account and seeing some £10 going out to some charity. And I just had this thought. So I got my phone out at the time, did a calculation, and we've heard of things like tithing, das Fund, Dana, Tzedakah, Zakat. Oh, I named them all. Well, all the ones I know. Every faith has this generosity built in, and the suggestion that we really should share our wealth and help those less fortunate than ourselves.
Mm.
But the 10% number is kind of off-putting, especially for people who are struggling a bit and they're making ends meet, but they maybe don't have a lot of extra disposable income. And I knew I wasn't giving 10%. So when I looked at my number, I thought maybe it was going to be 5% or 4. It was 0.5%. And I was shocked and very upset with myself. I just lost sight of that. And I had an immediate reaction, a visceral reaction. This is not my identity. I am not someone who gives 0.5% of my net income and keeps 99.5%. That's not me. So that sparked off discussions with people, a bit of planning, and it took about a year, came up with the concept and the site. And the site, giving1%.com, is literally there for people to stop and think, do a calculation, that's at the heart of the site, and then decide what to do. So we're not a charity. We don't ask for money. We don't take money or spend it or give it. There's no money changing hands. It's just a thought. It's just a thought-provoking site, and then people can reflect. I even find it difficult to suggest where people should give their money, because really everyone will give, where their heart tells them to give. But the more important thing is, in a society where people are saying, governments should do this, big companies should take their profits, and yeah, they should. But if they're not, what can we do? Each individual who has money left over after paying their bills, could we give at least 1%? Could we live on 99% or maybe 98% of our net income? And that inspires me. And that's just one manifestation of thoughtful leadership.
So is this is about, rather than sort of, directing people to this charity or this size of gesture or anything like that, it's all about small and consistent acts
Thank you.
is that what we're talking about here, rather than
Yes.
grand showpiece now and again, look at me, I'm donating kind of gestures?
If you get a chance to watch the TEDx talk, so I
Yeah.
was invited to do that in October 2024. Such a privilege, such a wonderful experience to share this idea, worth spreading, hopefully. I really would love people to know their giving number. And that number, you're absolutely right, is what they're giving regularly. The best way to set it up is obviously standing orders or automatic payments from a bank account. Some visionary companies offer payroll giving. And I think there could even be a tax benefit because it might come out before the person receives their money. I don't know. That's not what I'm aiming to do, is make it part of our consciousness and absolutely promote regular charitable giving. Because you're right, many people will sponsor a friend who's doing a bike ride, or give money when they see something heartbreaking on TV. But charities need real money every single month to serve their clients, if you want to call them
Mm,
that.
mm.
And most charities don't have enough regular donors. It's very spiky. They're doing far too many ad hoc campaigns and hoping. And, but I mean, as we know, hope is not a strategy. So,
I would recommend everybody goes and watches that video and TEDx. So I want to move from one form of percentage to another, if you like. That you said earlier in this interview that you're currently, the book midwife, you probably allocate about 20% of your time. Now, a lot of people struggle with their allocation of time, even within one business, between how much time they spend on new business, development, current clients. And you've got, at least three things going on here, those that you've told me about.
Yeah.
I mean, what are you, I mean, I suspect you're really good at this juggling thing or this percentage of time here and there and so on. Is that something you really think about in terms of I'm going to give this amount of time and no more? And how do you stick to the discipline where there's lots of pressures pushing at you to maybe go one way rather than the other? I'm just interested in how you do that.
Well, I wouldn't say that I am strict about it or that I could tell you what the allocation is. That when I said 20% earlier, that was just something that came to me. I don't calculate it because, things change so fast in our society and in life. So I think what's more important is to be very, very clear about what we're doing and where we're going. I mean, I'm not the first person to say this. And every single day, and probably quite a few different moments in the day, to check in with ourselves. You and I and many of our colleagues are pretty self-aware, and that helps. But I am not rigid with any of this. For example, one of the other things I do, not to scare you or anyone else, but I speak in schools. I do as many talks as I can, especially in girls' schools. And I talk to school-age girls about entrepreneurship and confidence, exactly what we're talking about today. And that's important to me, but those gigs don't come up all the time. So when they come up, I fit them in. I don't count, oh, how many hours? And if it comes up and it makes sense and I'm in the country and I'm able to do it, I do it. Similarly, there are people in my networks who come up with things all the time. Just yesterday, a collaboration project that was not on my radar, very related to one of the things we were talking about today. And I thought, why not? Let's be open to it. I call, I used to teach goal setting, but I call this type of goal setting, create the goals, but make sure that the boundaries are porous to be able to allow things in and allow things out if they're not working.
Mm.
It's not about, well, I must do this. I'm a very persistent person, as you know, but I'm not stubborn to the point of ridiculousness. And, if something's not working, I've learned from Tony Robbins, change the approach. And so being willing to change the approach even, several times a day doesn't mean you're flaky. It means that you're a thoughtful leader. You're thinking things through.
Let's talk about, because we talked about one form of, sort of, the way you manage your time, and some people are good at that, some people are not so good at that. I mean, in terms of, you personally, I mean, what if people said, oh, Mindy, she's great at what she does, but actually she could be better at doing this. I mean, what would be the things that you would say people would say some of your biggest challenges as an entrepreneur, and how do you sort of mitigate them or overcome them?
I'll answer the second part first. How I mitigate and overcome is I ignore people who have opinions about what I should be doing. And I suggest that everybody listening to us does the same. Look, we get to choose. We have so much more choice than we realize. And many times we're swayed and we're influenced by what others are saying and thinking and telling us to do. In the Thoughtful Leader, if you'll indulge me, I just ask people to be aware of their influences and their influencers, because many times we don't even realize we're being influenced. So that kind of defines my philosophy about it. What most people think about me is that I don't relax enough. What they don't understand is I am blessed with abundant energy, as many people who know me well know. Why should I turn into some kind of Zen monk? It's not going to happen. It's, I'd be a nun, actually, I think, but it's not of interest to me. I work hard, I play hard, I sleep well. I am, happy and cheerful no matter what happens. And I am a problem solver, and that requires my energy. And so, but it's really interesting. Everybody has opinions about us, So just, maybe make those boundaries less porous. Just, make your confidence a bit stronger that you know what you're doing in this
It,
life.
yeah. So I mean, it's the same for all of us, isn't it? That we may be well aware of what our strong points and our weak points are, but they're unlikely to change or change that much, and so we might as well be happy with who we are and just press on, with what we're doing. Is that fair or
Yes, you've just sparked something, and I'm going to have to do a blog about it.
oh,
I don't think they are strong points and weak points. Trevor, I think, that's what other people are telling us. Oh, you need to be better with detail. No, I've hired somebody really good to work alongside me, and she's amazing at detail. I think it's very interesting when we say things like strengths and I'm not, trained in Strengths Finder or, it's great when you know your strengths and you feel good and you know what you're good at. But just because you're not good at something, it could be that you're not meant to be good at that. You don't like it. I'm not an expert in this area, but you that triggered something, obviously.
well, great. I'm looking forward to the blog then. So I mean,
Uh-huh.
let's talk about the immediate future. What's next for you? And that's the first question. The second question, just to round things off, is that what advice would you give to if should you wish to give advice to budding entrepreneurs as they start? So what's on your plate, and what would you say to those who are starting as you did, sort of back in 2002?
Right. Well, thank you. We're doing a lot of traveling that was postponed since COVID, and that's picking up now. But I am already planning for a few events in October and November, and that is exciting because I've done the thoughtful leadership work one to one. I've never done, oh, no, that's not true. I've done two retreats, but they were years ago. I've now been invited to be a guest speaker at a retreat and facilitate 2 days worth of this content on how to be a thoughtful thought leader. I'm excited. It's in New York, which I go back there all the time anyway. And I really feel this is what's needed. And I think people are beginning to respond. So that's exciting. I'm also lining up some private clients for the year. But that, like I say, that doesn't take up all my time. So giving 1% will be getting more of my attention, doing more speaking in schools in the new academic year. And next year, well, I'll have to work it around all my travel, but it's more of the same and just being open to the magic that comes up in conversations.
Okay, and the second part of the question in
Yes.
terms of giving advice to those just starting out.
Yeah. So I'll go back to one thing I said and one thing that I just said. One thing I said a few moments ago was, really be aware of who you're listening to, who you're allowing and what you're allowing to influence you, which is hard because it's subconscious. Reflection, taking that time out, doing this deep thinking about what's most important, where you're going, where you want to go, and not listening to people who are detractors. So that's one thing I would say. And the other thing I said, I just used the word magic of conversations. It is about having the goals in mind, but not being too rigid, leaving them porous around the edges, allowing things in, being open, give people more of your time with your phone off to listen to what they're saying and suggesting and to kind of, collaboration does require that kind of committed listening.
Well, that interview from Mindy was really enjoyable. There were some great phrases in there that she used when talking about writing a book, that a sacred part of people is going out into the world. I mean, we know that writing a book is on many people's bucket lists, and too many people just die with the book still stuck inside them. So, along with Mindy, I urge you all to get that book, that knowledge, that wisdom out into the world, because we've all got great stories to tell. And then there's that line from Mindy about please don't call yourself a thought leader. If the market thinks you are, they'll call you one. Thoughtful leader is, in my opinion, a much better way of looking at things, as she says. And finally, and this bit meant a lot to me personally, I mean, Mindy was talking about how she keeps all the balls in the air, how she juggles. And she does it by being very clear about where she's going, which means that every day, she says that we may need to check in with ourselves, take our quiet moments to reflect on whether the things that we're doing are helping us to get to that destination. So thank you to Mindy, and thank you to our growing band of listeners. We're getting some fantastic feedback on the show. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd really love for you to subscribe, rate and review through your usual podcast provider. And if you want to find out more about the Merri-Cast, look for me, Trevor Meriden, or our business Merriborn on merriborn.co.uk. That's it for this episode. Look forward to seeing you the next time. But until then, thanks for listening.